Right now, in corporate offices, all around the world, the 23-year-old trainees you just hired are probably generating like 10 times more value with your new enterprise AI than your senior partners.
Oh, absolutely.
And today, we are looking at a massive new data set that basically proves the AI revolution isn't trickling down from the C-suite. It's violently bubbling up from the bottom.
It completely inverts how we normally think about, enterprise technology deployment.
Right.
We usually assume software adoption is this top-down mandate, like the executives buy it, the managers enforce it, and then the rank and file eventually fall in line.
Yeah, that's the standard playbook.
But this data tells a completely different story about where the actual fluency is forming.
Yeah. So we are pulling this from a 2026 paper by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. It's called From Access to Impact: Understanding the Organizational Journey of Enterprise AI Deployment. And the reason we're doing a deep dive on this specific paper is just the sheer undeniable scale of it.
Right, it's huge.
We aren't talking about, a survey asking middle managers how they feel about the future of work. This is an analysis of raw ChatGPT enterprise usage data from over 1,500 organizations.
Wow.
Yeah, that's 17 million distinct messages tracked between January 2024 and March 2026.
That volume of data, it really strips away the public relations narratives.
Oh, totally.
Because companies love to put out press releases saying they're, AI first.
Right. Everyone is AI first right now.
Exactly. But this data set ignores the press releases and just looks at the server logs. Who is actually typing prompts? What are they asking? And most importantly, which organizations are actually translating those keystrokes into, measurable business value?
And that chasm between buying the software and actually getting the value out of it, that's our focus today.
Yeah.
Because when this technology hit 100 million users in 2 months, back in late 2022, the assumption was that workplace adoption would be a magic switch.
Right, just turn it on.
You buy the enterprise license, you turn it on, and your workforce is instantly 30% faster. But looking at this data, we're a few years into this now, and that instant magic simply didn't happen for the vast majority of companies.
Well, the assumption of instant magic ignores a classic economic phenomenon that we're watching play out in real time right now. We're currently navigating what economists like Brynjolfsson and his team outlined back in 2021, what they call the productivity J-curve.
Okay, let's unpack this J-curve concept.
Well,
because it sounds a lot like buying a top-tier gym membership.
Okay, I like that.
Right. Having the expensive access card in your wallet doesn't magically give you a six-pack. You actually have to show up, completely change your diet, sweat, build entirely new routines. The AI license just gets you in the door.
That analogy holds up surprisingly well, actually, if you look at the mechanics of what economists call general-purpose technologies.
Right.
If you look back at the introduction of electricity or, the personal computer or the internet, the initial phase always requires massive investments that are completely invisible to a traditional accounting balance sheet.
It's invisible how?
Well, economists refer to these as intangible investments.
Meaning things you can't, point to in an office, like a new server rack or a company car.
Right.
So exactly what kind of intangible investments are we talking about here? Because the software license is pretty tangible on an expense report.
Yeah, but the license is the cheap part. The intangible investments are the thousands of hours spent redesigning business processes.
Right, the human hours.
Exactly. It's the time spent developing entirely new organizational workflows, rewriting security protocols, and doing really heavy workforce training.
Wow.
And because an organization is pouring all this time and capital into restructuring itself rather than producing its actual product, measured productivity actually flatlines.
Or dips?
Sometimes it even dips, yeah.
Yeah.
That is the bottom of the J. It goes down before it goes up.
So every CFO staring at a dashboard right now, wondering why the AI isn't doing the work of 5 people yet. They're just looking at the bottom of the J.
Exactly.
They're paying the monthly gym fee, but they are still in the phase of figuring out how to use the equipment.
And learning to use the equipment takes time for the complementary investments to mature. You don't see the massive spike in productivity, the upward swing of the J, until the new processes are fully baked into the daily routine.
Right.
And the Westover data shows that as a global corporate culture, we are firmly stuck in that messy, expensive investment phase.
That makes so much sense. It explains the friction. It explains why the adoption curve feels so muddy right now.
Yeah.
But let's look at who is actually slogging through that mud right now.
Yeah.
Because the paper reveals a massive paradox in corporate adoption when you look at the firm level. Who is the typical buyer of ChatGPT Enterprise?
So the initial wave of adopters are overwhelming corporate giants.
Okay.
The median revenue for an adopting firm in this data set is $2.3 billion. Yeah. If you compare that to non-adopters, their median revenue sits around $210 million. So we are looking at massive companies with a median headcount of roughly 3,000 employees.
And it's a specific flavor of giant, right? Like, they aren't heavily industrialized companies with massive physical supply chains.
Yeah, not usually.
They have a distinct profile characterized by high R&D budgets and high SG&A overhead. They're very knowledge work heavy.
Which logically positions them as the prime candidates for a tool that essentially synthesizes and generates knowledge.
Right.
They have the capital to absorb the massive upfront licensing costs, and they have the intellectual property to potentially leverage.
But here is the data point that completely contradicts the expected narrative.
Yeah, this is the twist.
The biggest companies with the billion-dollar revenues and massive R&D budgets are buying the technology, but once it's deployed, their actual usage per employee is remarkably low.
Yeah.
The most intense, sophisticated users of this technology are mid-sized firms. Wait, so the biggest companies with all the money are buying the technology, but they're getting bogged down in their own bureaucracy. Are mid-sized companies just better equipped to actually use the tools?
What's fascinating here is size absolutely buys the software, but agility drives the integration.
Agility.
A massive enterprise has the dedicated procurement teams and the strategic mandate from the board to sign a multi-million-dollar licensing deal. But integration requires agility.
So they can buy it, but they can't digest it.
The digestive process is entirely bogged down by organizational complexity. Think about it. If you're a 10,000-person company deploying a fundamentally new way of working across a dozen divisions, multiple time zones, and like layers of middle management is a bureaucratic nightmare.
Oh, I can only imagine. The meetings alone.
Exactly. You have legal departments, data governance boards, and HR all requiring separate approvals for how the AI can be used. A mid-sized firm, conversely, has enough capital to afford the enterprise tier, but they still retain enough organizational slack and agility to fundamentally redesign their workflows without requiring a 2-year committee review.
So agility at the top makes sense. A mid-sized company's CTO and general counsel can just get in a room, make a decision on a Wednesday, and roll it out on a Friday.
Basically.
But agility doesn't just happen in the boardroom, it has to happen at the keyboard. And when we look at the individual level who is actually typing the prompts, the data flips our assumptions about corporate hierarchy completely upside down.
It really does. The assumption is usually that senior leadership drives new strategic initiatives.
Right, top down.
But the usage data challenges that entirely. While usage is broad across functions, you see tech, finance, HR, and marketing all logging in, the intensity is wildly skewed by seniority.
Skewed how? Give me the numbers.
So junior, early career workers are sending, on average, 8 to 9 more weekly messages than the average active user within their exact same firm. It is a striking negative seniority gradient. Executives, founders, and partners send notably fewer messages than the baseline average.
Wait, 8 to 9 more messages a week doesn't just mean they are tinkering. That's a fundamentally different workflow.
Oh, completely.
If you're a manager listening to this, the trainee you hired 6 months ago out of college is vastly out-prompting you.
Yes.
But why? Is it just like a generational comfort with technology? Or is there a structural reason the juniors are hammering the keyboard?
Well, the structural reason is task alignment.
Okay.
Early career workers are generally tasked with the heavy processing of information. They draft the initial documents, they synthesize the market research, they format the spreadsheets, and they iterate on the basic concepts.
Right.
These are the exact deterministic, synthesis-heavy tasks where generative AI excels today.
It's the daily grind tasks.
Yeah, exactly. The paper makes a very useful distinction here between task reach and task depth.
Okay.
Task reach refers to the sheer variety of things people try to do with the AI at least once.
Like asking it to write a polite email to a difficult client, and then asking it to plan a vacation itinerary, and then asking it to debug a Python script.
Exactly. That wide experimentation is the task reach, but task depth represents where the actual heavy, sustained volume of messages is concentrated. And the data shows that while reach is massive and chaotic, depth is hyper-concentrated. The core engine of AI usage right now isn't writing cute emails. It is deeply embedded in technical documentation, digital work like coding, and drafting complex, repetitive communications.
So the executives might use it once a week to summarize a 50-page strategic brief. which is high value but low volume.
Right.
But the junior analyst is using it 40 times a day to structure data and draft the initial components of that same brief.
Which means the junior analyst is the one developing an operational intuition for the tool.
Oh, that's a good point.
They're learning its blind spots, its hallucination triggers, and the specific prompt architectures that yield the best results. They are the ones building the muscle memory.
So if the 23-year-olds are driving the actual usage and building this muscle memory, how does a mid-sized company actually scale that?
Yeah, that's the big challenge.
Because you can't just rely on a handful of rogue analysts writing great code or reports in a silo. How do organizations move from chaotic, bottom-up experimentation to a formalized, measurable, company-wide impact?
That requires crossing the chasm from individual tooling to enterprise infrastructure, and the paper identifies a clear investment ratio that separates the successful firms from the failures. It's called the 1.3.5 rule.
Okay, I need to challenge this 1.3.5 rule immediately, because on paper, it sounds absurd.
Let's hear it.
The framework states that for every $1 a successful organization spends on the actual technology, the licensing fees, they spend $3 on process redesign and data infrastructure and $5 on capability building and human training.
Yeah, that ratio is the defining characteristic of a successful deployment.
But why? I mean, the entire selling point of large language models is natural language. You just talk to it.
Right.
Why on earth would a company need to spend 5 times their software budget teaching people how to talk to a chatbot, or 3 times the budget doing IT plumbing?
Because a natural language interface connected to nothing is just a sophisticated toy.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The $3 in that ratio, the process redesign and data infrastructure, is the invisible plumbing. The most advanced AI model in the world is virtually useless to an enterprise if it cannot securely and accurately access the enterprise's actual context.
You're talking about the data silos.
Exactly. The source data features a perfect illustration of this friction. A global pharmaceutical company launched a ChatGPT enterprise pilot specifically for their research and development teams. And initially, the pilot completely flatlined. The researchers basically abandoned it within weeks.
Let me guess. They asked a highly technical question about a historical drug trial, and the AI gave them a generic answer it scraped from Wikipedia.
Spot on. It was blind to the company's proprietary knowledge. The AI couldn't see the internal compound libraries, it couldn't access the historical regulatory submissions, and it couldn't read the internal peer reviews. It was functioning purely as a generic consumer tool, offering zero enterprise-specific value.
So how do they fix the plumbing?
They had to endure a grueling 6-month IT project.
6 months. Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't just pointing the AI at a database. It required working with legal and data governance to establish highly complex permission structures.
Oh, of course.
If a researcher prompts the AI, the system has to instantly verify their clearance level, search the internal vector databases, retrieve the proprietary documents, and feed that context into the language model securely. It's a massive data engineering challenge.
But once they built that infrastructure, the usage spiked 5-fold, right?
Exactly.
Because suddenly researchers could say, compare our 2018 phase 2 trial results for this compound against the new FDA guidelines, and the AI actually knew what they were talking about.
Right. That is the data infrastructure component. But the other half of that $3 investment is workflow redesign. You actually have to change how work moves through the organization.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because they didn't just bolt AI onto their old way of working.
No, the rollout of AI coding tools at Stripe is a fascinating case study in the paper.
Because they didn't just hand the developers the AI and say, write code faster. That just speeds up the existing conveyor belt.
And speeding up a flawed process just creates technical debt faster.
Right, exactly.
Stripe re-engineered the entire software development lifecycle. Because the AI could handle generating the initial boilerplate code and the basic scaffolding, the role of the product manager changed.
Oh, how so?
Well, PMs realized they needed to write much more detailed, rigorous specifications up front. A vague spec yields useless AI code. A rigorous spec yields instant scaffolding.
And it fundamentally broke their code review process, didn't it?
It required a complete restructuring of how humans review code. Think about it. When a human writes code, Other humans look for basic syntax errors, missing semicolons or standard logical gaps.
Typos, basically.
Right, but AI generates syntactically perfect code that might contain deep architectural logic flaws or subtle security vulnerabilities.
Oh, that's dangerous.
It hallucinates functional but insecure solutions. So the reviewers had to be retrained to stop looking for typos and start scanning for AI-specific hallucination patterns.
So it changes the entire assembly line. You have junior developers taking on incredibly complex feature builds because the routine coding is automated, and senior developers transition from writing code to providing architectural oversight.
Precisely.
It's doing things differently, not just faster.
That is the crux of process redesign. The legal firm in the study provides another angle on this. They had one senior associate who built her own highly specific prompt chain for reviewing vendor contracts.
Yay.
It wasn't just a simple summarize this command. She built a multi-step workflow that cut her review time by 60% without dropping accuracy.
A 60% reduction in billable hours for a single associate is a massive efficiency gain.
Huge.
But the challenge is that her method is tacit knowledge. It's locked in her head and her specific chat history.
Which is why the firm invested the time and capital to institutionalize her brilliance.
Right.
They didn't just give her a bonus, they brought in process engineers to document exactly how she was doing it.
Wow.
Which clauses did she let the AI summarize? Which clauses required mandatory manual review? What did her verification loop look like? They turned her personal workflow into a standardized firm-wide template and integrated it directly into their matter management software.
So they took the specific mechanism of her success and scaled it across 1,000 lawyers. That justifies the $3 investment in process for sure.
Absolutely.
But we still have to tackle the $5, the capability building and training. How do you train an entire workforce to use a tool that is highly contextual and constantly evolving?
Well, the first rule the data makes clear is that generic, centralized training fails miserably. Yeah, if an HR department puts everyone in a room for a 1-hour seminar on the basics of prompt engineering, you get a very modest, temporary bump in engagement that fades within a month.
Because telling a financial analyst how to ask the AI to write a haiku doesn't help them build a discounted cash flow model.
Exactly.
The abstraction just doesn't translate to their daily friction points.
The cognitive leap is too wide. The data highlights a professional services firm that completely overhauled their training approach after a generic rollout failed.
Okay.
They tripled their sustained usage rates by ditching the universal tutorials and building highly specific role-based modules.
So they fractured the training by department.
They went deeper than the department. They fractured it by specific daily deliverables.
Wow.
The management consultants were trained using real, sanitized project data on how to use the AI to synthesize client interviews and draft the scaffolding for slide decks. But the financial analysts, sitting in the exact same building, received completely different training on how to use it for unstructured data extraction and financial modeling prep.
Make the training immediately relevant to the deliverable they are stressed about completing by Friday, and they will actually adopt the tool.
That's the secret. And beyond the initial training, the most successful organizations build continuous, decentralized support networks. The paper refers to this as distributed leadership.
Okay.
A centralized IT help desk simply cannot keep up with the sheer variety of use cases across a diverse enterprise.
So you embed the experts in the actual teams, like Microsoft's Copilot champions or Salesforce's Trailblazer models.
Exactly. You identify the early, intense adopters, those junior employees we discussed earlier in the marketing department, the finance team, the HR group. You give them advanced, specialized access, and you empower them to be the first line of support for their immediate peers.
That's brilliant.
They host weekly drop-in sessions. They curate libraries of the most effective prompts for their specific team's workflows. They understand the context of the work deeply, which makes their support infinitely more actionable than an IT ticket.
Okay, let's step back and look at the executive view for a second. We've been heavily on the data infrastructure. We've fundamentally redesigned our workflows. We've embedded super users and run role-specific training. The investment phase is heavily underway.
Yep.
But executive patience is notoriously thin. If you are sinking millions into this 1.3.5 framework, you have to prove it is actually working. How do you measure the return on investment for something as intangible as better knowledge work.
This is the exact point where many deployments lose executive support. They rely on activity metrics because they're easy to pull from a dashboard.
Right.
They track the number of messages sent, the active daily users, or the total tokens generated.
Which tells you absolutely nothing about value. I could generate 1,000,000 tokens asking the AI to write fantasy football team names. Activity does not equal impact.
To prove value, organizations must bridge the gap from activity metrics to outcome metrics.
Okay, how do they do that?
The healthcare example in the Westover paper illustrates the mechanism of this transition perfectly. A clinical organization rolled out an AI tool designed specifically to handle patient documentation.
If we just look at the activity dashboard, it probably looked fine, right? 70% of the doctors logging in, sending a few dozen messages a week.
But those numbers don't justify a massive enterprise contract. The organization had to measure the actual operational outcome. And the mechanism of the tool was designed to target a specific bottleneck, clinical notes.
Oh, doctors hate clinical notes.
Right, so the doctors weren't typing summaries into a chat box. They were using a specialized interface that captured ambient audio of the patient consultation, automatically mapped the medical terminology to billing codes, and structured it into a standard SOAP note subjective, objective, assessment, and plan.
So the doctor just reviews and approves the generated note instead of typing it from scratch at the end of the day. What did the outcome metrics actually show?
The average time a physician spent writing a single patient note dropped from 12 minutes down to 7 minutes.
Wow.
Furthermore, routine audits found the AI-assisted notes were 91% complete, which was a measurable improvement in accuracy over the manual notes.
Saving 5 minutes a note across 20 patients a day. That is nearly 2 hours of recovered time.
And the organization measured the ultimate outcome. Doctors reported having 90 more minutes per week for direct face-to-face patient care.
That's incredible.
You can put a definitive financial and operational value on 90 minutes of recovered physician time. It translates to patient volume, reduced physician burnout, and lower turnover costs.
There is another really compelling example in the paper involving a sales organization, too. They didn't just guess if the AI was helping. They ran a rigorous, quasi-experimental A/B test.
Yeah, that was a great study. They deployed the AI tools to specific sales teams while holding it back from control groups with similar historical performance metrics.
And the teams armed with the AI closed their deals 15% faster. But what was the mechanism there? Were they just sending, way more cold emails?
No, it wasn't volume. It was hyper-personalization at scale.
Oh.
Instead of relying on generic marketing copy, the AI-equipped teams could instantly synthesize a prospect's recent public earnings calls, their industry headwinds, and the specific capabilities of the product being sold to draft highly customized value propositions for every single client interaction.
That would normally take hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They compressed the research and drafting phase from hours to minutes, allowing them to advance the sales cycle significantly faster.
So if the outcomes are this undeniable, if we are recovering 90 minutes of a doctor's time and accelerating enterprise sales cycles by 15%, what is stopping us from just automating everything? Why do we still need the expensive human in the loop?
This raises an important question, and it sits at the center of the entire economic transition.
Yeah.
The answer is rooted in risk management, ethical oversight, and the absolute necessity of intelligent failure.
Intelligent failure.
We cannot blindly trust fully automated decision-making in consequential areas because machine learning models are fundamentally optimization engines based on historical data. The risks of error amplification and scaling historical biases are catastrophic.
And the financial services example in the data provides a stark warning about exactly this kind of catastrophic risk.
Yes. A financial institution deployed an AI tool to assist their teams with loan application processing.
Which makes sense.
Right. On the surface, the mechanism seems perfect for AI crunching complex financial histories to determine creditworthiness quickly.
But they didn't just let it run blind. They instituted what the paper calls AI equity reviews to audit the model's outputs.
And that audit mechanism prevented a massive crisis.
What did they find?
The reviewers discovered that the AI tool was consistently recommending higher interest rates for loan applicants from specific geographic regions, even when those applicants had credit scores and financial profiles identical to applicants in other regions.
It was algorithmically redlining neighborhoods.
Yes.
But why? I mean, the AI doesn't have a conscious prejudice.
It doesn't have prejudice, it has lazy optimization.
Okay, what does that mean?
The model was trained on massive amounts of historical financial data. If, historically, certain zip codes experienced higher default rates due to decades of systemic real-world economic issues, the AI blindly correlates that zip code with higher risk.
Wow.
It optimizes for the historical pattern without understanding the context or the legality or the ethics of using that pattern.
If they had fully automated that system to save money on underwriters, they would have scaled discrimination across thousands of loans in a matter of days.
Exactly.
They would have invited massive regulatory fines and completely destroyed their reputation.
The human in the loop is the circuit breaker.
Yeah, the circuit breaker.
The human provides the context, the ethical boundary, and the accountability that the mathematical model entirely lacks. Organizations that try to bypass the human for the sake of pure efficiency are taking on incalculable risk.
Which brings us to how organizations actually manage the humans during this transition. Because if you want humans to act as effective circuit breakers, they have to trust the organization.
Right.
And introducing a technology that can do 60% of their job instantly usually destroys that trust.
Change management requires psychological safety. Transparency is not just a cultural nicety in this scenario, it's a hard business strategy.
The consulting firm and the dataset handled this brilliantly, didn't they? When they rolled out the enterprise AI to all their junior analysts, leadership didn't use corporate speak. They didn't talk about empowering synergies or whatever.
No, they were brutally, uncomfortably transparent.
They explicitly told the junior staff, this tool is going to fundamentally shift our staffing models. The routine research synthesis and formatting that used to take you 40 hours a week is now going to take 4 hours.
And telling a 23-year-old that 90% of their current job description just evaporated is usually a great way to trigger a mass panic.
Oh, absolutely. But they immediately paired that reality with a structural commitment.
Yeah.
They told the staff, we are going to redeploy you, not replace you. We are going to train you to spend those recovered 36 hours on direct client interaction, complex strategic thinking, and actual problem solving earlier in your career than ever before.
By addressing the anxiety head-on, they transformed the AI from an existential threat to job security into an accelerator for professional growth.
The engineered trust.
And you need that trust if you want those employees to aggressively experiment, find the edges of the tool, and redesign their own workflows. If they think the tool will fire them, they will quietly sabotage it.
That is the ultimate goal of the capability building investment.
Right.
You aren't just teaching them to click buttons. You're redefining their value to the firm.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are listening to this, trying to map this back to your own career or your own company, what is the ultimate takeaway?
Well, we have covered a massive amount of ground.
We have. We've seen that AI adoption isn't a magical switch. It is a grueling multi-year J-curve. It demands real, often painful financial and temporal investments in unglamorous data plumbing, fundamental workflow redesign, and highly tailored human training.
The primary takeaway is the requirement for strategic patience. The organizations succeeding in the data aren't rushing to show immediate headcount reductions. They are methodically laying the infrastructure.
So if you or your team feel like you are just playing around with these tools right now, or if you feel frustrated that it hasn't completely revolutionized your Tuesday morning yet, don't be discouraged. We are firmly in the investment phase. The heavy lifting is happening in the data silos and the workflow maps right now. The harvest phase is coming.
But as we look toward that harvest phase, we need to return to the most disruptive data point in this entire analysis.
Okay, what's that?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we established unequivocally that junior early career workers are the most intense, experimental, and fluent users of generative AI in the enterprise.
Right, the trainees.
They are building the operational muscle memory, while the executives are barely sending a few messages a week.
They are the vanguard.
Which points towards something historically unprecedented. We might be standing on the precipice of a massive systemic inversion of the corporate mentorship model.
Oh, wow.
For the first time in modern corporate history, the 22-year-old trainees hold the highest literacy and the deepest operational intuition regarding the organization's most critical new capability.
That is a staggering thought. Reverse mentorship is usually treated as a fun, optional HR initiative where a younger employee helps a VP set up their social media.
Right, exactly.
But this data suggests it might become an absolute competitive necessity for survival. Are we heading toward a reality where senior executives must be formally, structurally mentored by their own interns just to understand how to steer the ship?
It's very possible.
The interns teaching the C-suite how to actually operate the company, that is a wild paradigm-shifting reality to prepare for. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the AI Access to Impact gap. Keep experimenting, keep looking for the friction points in your own workflows, and maybe, just maybe, go ask your youngest trainee for a little advice. Catch you next time.